Yeah, I was told that I would never walk properly, let alone run. I can argue now that I can hardly run now. I've never considered myself to be a runner. I am an animal advocate, advocating for animals through athletics. That's all I am. I've won a lot of marathons, around the world. I've broken course records and done stuff like that. Go and do a marathon des Sables. It's a week-long stage race in the Sahara Desert, and it's tough. You have to carry all your supplies in a backpack for the week, and they give you a limited water supply, and that's all you get, and then you're left to your own devices. And the more you realise how little time actually in a lifespan you have to achieve everything you want to achieve. So, as I say, I'm very driven. I don't like the reason I'm so driven, and I wish I didn't have to do what I do. I'm not a talented runner at all. I have no talent whatsoever. I have a lot of determination, a lot of motivation. I've never had a coach for running because nobody would coach me because I was vegan, and I was very open about the fact that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm going to the North Pole, and I'm going to run a marathon. The only person, if I'd have not done it, the only person I'd have been cheating is myself and the animals. I don't know how I did it. I do know how I did it. I was just thinking about the animals and why I'm doing this. I didn't want to let anyone down, and then least of all, I didn't want to let the animals down.
Welcome back, legends, to another epic episode of the Plant Fueled podcast. If you're new here, I'm Callum Weir, your host, and you've joined us for a truly extraordinary conversation today. Our guest is no other than Fiona Oakes, a woman who redefines resilience, determination, and humility. Fiona doesn't think of herself as an athlete, and yet she holds not one, not two, but 4 marathon world records and multiple course records. She's the fastest female to complete a marathon on every single continent, including the North Pole. Fiona also holds the record for the fastest half marathon and did it dressed in an animal costume. Fiona also set multiple course records, including the Antarctic Ice Marathon. But that's just the start. She's tackled the infamous Marathon des Sables, often called the toughest foot race on the planet. Imagine running a marathon every single day for 6 days across the scorching Sahara Desert, carrying all your supplies on your back. Fiona didn't just complete it, she conquered it 3 times. And what makes Fiona's story even more incredible? She does this all with one kneecap after undergoing life-changing surgery as a teenager. Doctors told her she'd probably never walk properly again, let alone run. But Fiona, she didn't just walk, she defied every limit ever placed on her. But here's the thing, Fiona doesn't care about medals, personal bests, or even the records she shattered. Her driving force has always been the animals. Everything she does, from running these brutal races to operating Tower Hill's stable animal sanctuary, where she cares for over 400 rescued animals, is fueled by her desire to give them a voice. After spending time with Fiona, I can tell you she's the most genuine, humble soul you'll ever meet. She doesn't seek the spotlight, fame, or accolades. She simply wants to make the world a better place for every living being. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't get this episode up in time to highlight her most recent achievement throughout December. Fiona was running an astonishing 25 miles a day, every day for 25 days to raise funds for Tower Hill Stables. But don't worry, you can still support her incredible work. I've linked all the ways you can donate and help below. And trust me, every little bit counts towards keeping this sanctuary running. If Fiona's story inspires you as much as it does me, be sure to check out her documentary, Running for Good, which follows her journey, and her book, which dives even deeper into her life and mission. This is more than a conversation. It's a masterclass on compassion, grit, and using your life to make a real difference. Let's get into it, legends, and meet the remarkable Fiona Oakes. And hey, if you're loving these conversations, do me a favor, tap that like button, drop a review, or hit a follow wherever you are able to listen to these podcasts. It's such a small action for you, but a massive for us. It helps more people find these inspiring stories and keep the podcast growing. Thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Peace and plants. Fiona, welcome to the Plant Fueled podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and it's lovely to be here.
So before we dive into this episode, I want to thank you for giving me your time, because there's not many people that would be willing to appear on a podcast the day before you're about to start running 25 miles a day for 25 days throughout the whole of December. Like, a lot of people would be, resting, eating, carb loading. However, you're here. And it doesn't surprise me that you're here, because from everything I know about you, you're just go, go, go.
That's it. I think it's when I stop that I run into difficulties. The momentum keeps flowing, and, the more you do, the more you want to do, and the more you realise how little time actually in a lifespan you have to achieve everything you want to achieve. So that's what kind of motivates me and keeps it flowing.
Yeah. And all the running 25 days for 25 miles for 25 days. That's a bit of a tongue twister. And it's all to raise money for the sanctuary as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a symbolic thing. I always do something round about this time of year, and I worked out it roughly costs £625 UK pounds in money per day to feed the animals at the sanctuary. And I just figured to combine that 625 miles of running in the period from the 1st to the 25th of December works out a convenient or inconvenient, ask me tomorrow, probably inconvenient, 25 miles a day. And it's not just to raise funds for animals here. It's to promote veganism and to raise awareness of a plant-based lifestyle and the viability and longevity that you can sustain on plants. Because I've been vegan practically all my life, 5 decades, and still going strong. And even to contemplate taking on a challenge like this, with the confidence to think that you've got a good chance of doing it, is a testament to, I believe, to my lifestyle choices over decades. I say it when people go, to these ultra stage races. I particularly like Marathon des Sables, and when you get people there for the first time, I say, look, even just to make it to the start line, to have that kind of motivation to be here and take on a challenge like this and train for a challenge like this is testament in itself to how mentally and physically strong you are. And that's what I think this challenge is going to be about. I think the ultra running, the longer distance stuff is, yeah, obviously you've got to be physically fit to do it, but it's mental as well. You've got to be focused, and you've got to really know why you're doing something. And I don't lack motivation because I'm very, very firmly focused on why I'm living my life. Actually, I'm very passionate about what I do, and I believe totally in the promotion of veganism in a positive, in a proactive and peaceful way, because that's what veganism is all about.
Yeah, because I think if anybody dives into all your achievements and the world records you hold, and like when they see someone like that, you can only assume there's a lot of determination and grit and a lot of drive and passion, and maybe a slight bit of insanity. But because your body's been through a lot, it's endured a lot, and because you've done all these achievements. But who is Fiona Oakes?
Fiona Oakes is just a little girl in a pushchair that told her mummy when she was 2 years old she just wanted to help animals. That's who Fiona Oakes is, and she's that same little girl now that just wants to help animals in any way that I can. To be honest with you, I make people laugh a bit, and I don't mean to when I say I don't get up in the morning and fly out of bed and think, oh, I must go running. I've got to do this run. I'm just so excited about it. I've used the running as a platform for promotion of veganism. I wouldn't say that I'm I'm not a talented runner at all. I have no talent whatsoever. I have a lot of determination, a lot of motivation, and a lot of like stamina and endurance and focus. The reason I got into running, to be quite honest with you, is around about in the early noughties, Paula Radcliffe, British runner, had moved up from the 10,000 metres onto the roads, and she was doing really, really well in the marathon. And it got all the hashtags attached to this. Suddenly everybody was interested in marathon running. So it was, mentally and physically brutal. You'd got to be really tough to do it. So the kind of scenario was set for this event. Whereas perhaps before Paula did really, really well, it wasn't that interesting to people in the Western world because we hadn't really got any great runners. So I thought, if I can just compete in and hopefully complete a marathon, it proves positively that on a long-term plant-based diet you can achieve anything, and it's not prohibitive to something as extreme as a marathon. Because I'd been running a sanctuary then for about 4 or 5 years, and I realised that I could help a few animals here. That's all. I could change their world for the better. I couldn't address the problem and the reason that they need to find a sanctuary. I've always thought that the answer is not just having sanctuaries. It's got to work in conjunction with something else. And that in conjunction is there not being a need for sanctuaries anymore into the future. I'm sorry that there still is. So yeah, I just wanted to build a platform with which to speak out for the animals, and it grew from there. I mean, I've never had a coach for running because nobody would coach me because I was vegan, and I was very open about the fact that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I'm kind of self-taught, trial and error. It's all been a trial, and I've made loads of errors. That's what I always say. But, you know, I don't quite know how I did it, but within a year or two of seeing Paula Radcliffe, you know, breaking a world record, I was literally standing next to her on the start line of the London Marathon on the elite start, in essence, competing next to her. And I've been on the start line of many of the world's major marathons on the elite. And that's where I wanted to be, because obviously you realise very quickly that in a 50,000 runner race, wearing a vegan runner top, you're going to get lost. But if you're out there on the start, you're getting coached into the Amsterdam Marathon, sitting next to your idol, Haile Gebrselassie, then you're going to get some attention for this word. And, you know, you can't go around and introduce yourself. Hello, I'm Fiona and I'm vegan. Believe that. You can literally, they see you kind of sidling into the elite enclosure. And people ask me, what is in those elite enclosures like at the Berlin Marathon? Well, basically, clean portaloos. And anyone who's ever done a marathon will know. Oh,
I know exactly what you mean. I did my first marathon last year, and the portaloos are vile. That is so disgusting.
I mean, that is worth it in itself. You know, if I could tell someone why would you train 100 miles a week, like 9 sessions a week? Clean portaloos, you know, and the opportunity of using those loos 1 minute before the race starts. Like, yeah, and you just walk out and then stand at the front and go. That is worth it. That's what you're doing it for. But yeah, so that's what my running is all about, as I say, promoting veganism. And, you know, I've done as much as I can. And but it's the main passion is running the sanctuary, helping the animals here, and doing something else as well, as because it just never seemed enough to just care for a few animals and change their world. People say it must be very, very satisfying. It is obviously very satisfying to go out there in the morning, like I've done this morning, and you see the little piggies snuggled up in their bed in the woods, and that's lovely. But it's really, really hard to say this without almost seeming ungrateful. But very often the piggies that I see in front of me are not the ones that are happy. It's the ones that are suffering at that moment. And there's billions of those and a tiny handful that aren't. So that's all that I've ever wanted to do with anything that I do, whether it be, I work as a retained firefighter. And when I joined the fire brigade, it was like, you know, this is going to be a relatively large commitment. How can I make it work for veganism? And it was a great opportunity back in the early noughties to bring awareness of something that people had never been exposed to, like in the fire brigade. You know, when I went for my initial fitness test, I was greeted with some hostility. I think at the time, because this is like 20 years ago, being a female anyway, it was, you know, I mean, there weren't many, let's put it like that. But being a vegan female, it was like, oh, she's going to be vegan.
That's going to open some eyes right there.
You know, that sort of thing, yeah. So, yeah, that's who Fiona is.
But you made the decision to go vegetarian at such a young age. Like, was it 3 years old?
3 years old, yeah.
Like, that's quite a bold choice for a 3-year-old. Like, there must have been a lot of awareness to be able to cultivate, like, a mindset that allowed you to step away from meat at such a young age, because I would say that most 3-year-olds don't really have that going through their head.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, I am a bit of a full steam ahead person. I mean, I'm go, 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 go. And during the lockdowns that we had, um, rather than kind of sitting and looking at my phone or whatever people do, I used it as an opportunity rather than from confrontation, like online people were getting very, very angry. It was more of a time of contemplation. So I did an awful lot of running, and where I live on the seawall, I can get out and I can run for literally hours alone. And I say, I met someone when I was out running over that period of time that I'd never really met before, and I was able to introduce myself to this person. And people say, well, who was it? And I said, it was me. I met myself. I actually had time to reflect on why I've done things, because honestly, I've never stopped to think. I've never made any decisions. It's a gut feeling, go with it. And I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to go with it because I feel inside me that this is going to work, and I can make this positively an outcome for the animals. And so, yeah, it wasn't really a decision. It was something that was in me. It's kind of in me, and it's really, really hard to explain to anyone. My mum took, because I live with my parents still. My dad's very poorly, but my mum's still very, very active. And she says, looking back on it, the signs were all there, but she almost didn't know how to read them. I refused. We never had milk in the house because, strangely enough, my mum rejected that at school. And my grandma was called into school, apparently, because mum wouldn't drink the milk and the teachers couldn't understand it. And so that's not a product she's ever really bought or used. And after that, I just refused to eat meat. I mean, it's just, I can't really remember why. It just was a natural reaction to something that I've always known is wrong for me. And then that grew and grew and grew, and I started to ask questions. And by the time I was 6 years old, I'd gone like completely vegan, but I didn't know the word vegan. I didn't know that until much later. In fact, my mum had a teacher at school back in the 1940s and 50s, a lady who was vegan. She actually knew Donald Watson. And because my mum is a pianist and this lady was a music teacher, they kept in touch. And she was able to articulate to my mum in kind of adult vocabulary what I was feeling and almost be a mentor to my mum. I don't know how it would have turned out without that. But it's just a part of who I am. I don't remember, honestly and truly, making a decision like some brilliant super baby. I'm going to be, it's not like that at all. That's not, I just go with, I'm a very, very, I've got a big thing. I'm not a big social media person. I don't follow people, particularly on social media or those kind of platforms. I try to encourage people to be who you are. I mean, obviously you can take advice from people and, admire people. And, I do very much admire Haile Gebrselassie, who was my running hero. But figure out who you are and go with that. That's the only advice I can give. So, yeah, it was a young age looking back. And it was very, very difficult. I mean, there were no products available. I don't buy any processed products. I don't eat any processed food at all. I don't buy any of the alternative, the substitute things. I've never had them, so I don't miss them. But when I was hospitalised with an orthopaedic condition in my teenage years, and my mum was actually accused of child abuse because it was, vegetarian wasn't a popular diet, but vegan was like, whoa, this is weird. And my mum, to be fair to her, and it's not been easy for my mum because she's not understood it. She's gone with it, but because she knows who I am. And she knows from a tiny little girl that this is all I've ever wanted. And she can tell the funny stories, like when she used to take me and my older sister we'd get Christmas money or whatever. We'd go to a big shop in the local city, which was called Redgates in Sheffield. And Alison would be there buying Dolly's dresses and whatever, and I'd be going and buying a cow. And my mum was a plastic cow. One occasion we went and my mum said, "Are you gonna have another cow?" And I looked at her apparently really vehemently. I'm about 3. I'm 3, and I am not having another cow. I need fencing and some bales of hay. And this is little plastic white fencing, little tiny little plastic bales of hay. And, you know, I don't know we don't come from a family that's ever, I mean, my parents are not, I mean, they love animals, as most people love animals, but they're not into them in a big way. I mean, I do know that from kind of ancestrally, my great uncles were in the First World War, and one stayed in the trenches to die with the horses that he was looking after. So I do know that there has been a love of animals in the past. But yeah, it's just who I am. I'm a little kind of, I suppose I'm the black sheep of the family in that respect. But yeah, just I'm constantly learning who I am and all about myself, and I think that's you'll die not knowing much. That's mine. But I always want to learn.
It does seem that like you kind of instinctively knew at such a young age. Like, but was there ever those like? Did you have like very honest parents as well about like obviously where meat was coming from? Because obviously there's a lot of like parents that would lie to their child about like bacon is pig, or like chicken nugget is a chicken. Whereas I know a few people that have made that decision from a very, very early age as well, but they've had very open and honest parents as well.
Yeah, my dad is not open and honest about anything, to be honest with you. My dad was just there in the background. And of course, as I say, when I was taken out of school when I was 13 years old with this orthopedic condition and basically just left to my own devices. It was before a time that there was homeschooling particularly, or home learning. There was no computers. I mean, it wasn't Dickensian, but it was pre that. And so Dad was just kind of there. I didn't have an easy time actually at that point because my dad was in an industry which was failing in the UK, and he was on strike a lot. So we were very, very limited with funding as well. And that's an example that I do use, even though we were advised to use soup kitchens in the UK. My dad was in the mining industry. Veganism is not, any diet can be as expensive or as inexpensive as you choose to make it. And mine has always been very basic and very inexpensive. But my mum is 100% honest with me. I mean, and mum looks back now and she said, it's not been easy being your mum. And, I sometimes I look at my mum and I wish I'd never been born. I wish she'd never had me. I think her life would have been a lot easier. And because I've put her through a lot of worry, and I've come up with some schemes, and, it's having an animal sanctuary, starting vegan runners. She couldn't make any of the connections, but she went with it, and she has always supported me and always been totally, utterly honest with me, because she knew that it would be a bad move to do anything else, because that's one thing I'm brutally honest. Some people very often don't like that. I come across as being quite tough. My job on this earth is to look after animals. It's not to be famous or bask in glory. I've got nothing to be proud about particularly. I don't like the reason that I started marathon running. I don't like the reason that I want to promote veganism. I don't like the fact that I'm trying to negate some of the toxicity and cruelty and exploitation of animals. I don't want that reason to be there in the first place. But it is, and so you have to just get on and do what you can do. But yeah, I mean, Mum's always been there for me. She still is. And my dad, he's never stopped me from doing anything, but he's never really, I think, understood me. I'm always full on, go, go, go. And that can be a bit overwhelming to be around, I think. I don't see myself as that. I just see myself as me doing what I do. Sometimes people come to the sanctuary, a lot of animals and the cattle, and they see what I have to do throughout the day. And then they think I talk about, I'm just going for a couple of hours running now. And they're like, oh, this is a bit. But I kind of think that's just normal because it's my normal. It's what I do. So I think everyone does it. Everyone lives with like 400 or 500 animals and looks after cattle and has got a lot of, race horses. They've got a lot of thoroughbreds and they're wandering around. And I just think that's the way it's normal for me. It's natural for me and everybody's different. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, but what you have seemed to achieve or achieved in the last 50 years, like, is absolutely insane for somebody that doesn't overly, as you said, like running or doesn't actually think they're an athlete. But what you've done is achieved so much in such a short period of time that is making such a difference to the animals that you're looking after, to animals in general. You're created more of a movement, and like obviously with these runs, you're getting a lot of media representation as well. And obviously that's going to start conversations because they're going to see these, like the vegan runner. And that's going to open up a lot of like conversation, controversy. Because people assume that you obviously shouldn't be able to do these things as a vegan. However, according to like doctors and science, you shouldn't have been able to do this altogether.
Yeah.
Like, there's You had an issue with your knee at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, I've had my kneecap removed. I had a lot of surgeries on both knees, and I was told I would never walk again properly, let alone run. Now, people say, well, why on earth did you start running? Well, it was basically I'd done a lot of cycling. I mean, I'm perfectly open with what happened. I missed 5 years of my school education. I was in and out of hospital a lot. I was in plaster. I've got a very, very defined upper body, and people say to me, oh, weight training. Sometimes I'm always tempted to say, yeah, I'm always down hitting the gym, And no, I don't do any weight training. I do think that my upper body developed a lot because I was on crutches and on weight bearing for so long during my teenage years. I became quite strong upper bodied. Then a family friend actually helped, and I went for a year on a business course in Oxford. And then went to work in London. I was doing a lot of cycling in Oxford, did a lot of bike racing, which actually was like a better exercise for me to do because it was no impact. When I got the sanctuary back in 1996, I didn't start the sanctuary as a sanctuary. I wanted a place where the animals that I'd already rescued could live in peace. One had a terrible accident to a horse called Oscar, a retired racehorse that I'd been rehabilitating for about 3 years. I kept him at a livery yard at a farm, and I used to cycle to the farm in the morning, check all the horses, do them, cycling to work in London, and then on the way home, check them again. And I came home one evening, 6 of the horses came over, Oscar didn't. I went into the field to find him, and I found that he'd been impaled on a fence and lost most of his hind quarter. And apparently one of the people at the farm said, while you were at work, the farmer who owns this place, he allowed somebody to go in there and shoot. And of course, Oscar had been a very highly strung horse, had got excited, he'd run into a fence, and he was at the vet for 13 weeks. And at that point, we decided that I had got to change the model of, I couldn't just be paying out fortunes to give other people the custody of the animals and then me just going off and having to work all the time to pay for it. So I don't quite know how we actually achieved what we did as a family. I mean, I do tell a story. It's absolutely true. I have a great aunt Nancy. She's now passed away. But she, when she knew there was even a chance that I could get a small piece of land where the animals could be cared for on my terms, she actually went to her bed. She lived in Chesterfield. I lived in Essex. And she had a sock, as a lot of older people did at the time, filled with money for a funeral. And she had £1,000 and then she'd give it to Fiona and just try and make this happen. and all my family clubbed together, and Auntie Nancy, my grandparents, Auntie Dot, everybody, and my parents. I mean, at one time, my mum had got more mortgages going than Santander to try and make this tiny little plot of land, 5 acres, and a house where the animals could be safe. And that was in 1996. As I say, from then I realised that I joined the fire brigade. I just wanted to do more. I've always wanted to do more. And that's when, in the early noughties, as I say, Paula Radcliffe was doing well with the marathon. And I knew I was relatively fit and strong. I mean, I was firefighting. I was looking after the animals at the sanctuary. That's no mean achievement. I mean, there's a lot of physical work here. And I just thought, well, if I could at least get round a marathon, that would prove that, as a long-term vegan, you can do anything. It's not prohibitive to even this extreme endurance event. And I will say that back in the day, like 20 years ago, the ultra running wasn't as popular. It was, there weren't all these ultra races everywhere. I mean, obviously MDS was going, but nobody had heard of it. So marathon was the definitive one to do well in. And I don't know how I did it. In a couple of years, I went from like just running about, if you like, to literally standing shoulder to shoulder with Paula Radcliffe on the start line of the London Marathon, the elite start. And it kind of took off from there. And that's when, in 2004, we started Vegan Runners, because we very quickly realised I was running in a Vegetarian Cycling and Athletics Club. It was the only affiliated running club to UK athletics, and you have to run in affiliated clothing when you actually run on elite starts. You can't just go with a slogan on your jumper and get free advertising. They're overzealous about their advertising. They come around with a piece of perspex and measure all the lettering, lest you could be, promoting something, that you shouldn't be. And Peter Simpson and I, a guy who was also in the VCAC, said, you do realise you're going to be on the start line with Paula. You do realise you're going to get camera attention and focus. No. Right, okay, we'll start a dedicated vegan running club, which I think, when you actually look at it, 20 years ago, that the Vegan Runners was started purely to get the vegan word out there in kind of a positive way, because when you're running off the start of a big city marathon, there's nobody else around you. People, come on vegan. Oh, she's vegan. I've heard it when I'm running along. I think it's the most inspiring thing that I've heard. Vegan lady, come on, vegan lady, and that's amazing. I remember, I think it was in 2005, I came top 20 in London or whenever. And I was running up the mall and I could hear the choppers overhead. That was signifying that the male runners were not too far away. And I ran up the mall and over the tannoy, and there were all these crowds of people. And the next runner in, it's going to be somebody from Vegan Runners. And for all that crowd to hear that word in such a positive way meant so much to me. It really did. And that's the only reason I've really done the running, because it is a big investment in time and effort. I mean, if you're going to run 100 mile a week, split over 9 sessions, and I've never trained with people. I've never had that kind of, motivation from others. When you feel down, somebody in the group feels up and you can lift each other. I've literally had to motivate myself to go out, find the time to actually thrash myself, because you've got to push hard. These sessions are not easy. I mean, if you're going to run 6 1-mile pushes at lunchtime and then you're going to run 12 miles in the evening, you're going to be tired. Even though a 12-mile run is not a big deal, it is when your legs are tired and you're in the middle, entrenched in one of these blocks of marathon training that probably last about 3 months. And you're paranoid about getting ill, about getting injured, because you just want to deliver your best on the morning of the race for the animals, because you want to be a good ambassador for them, because you are all they've got. You are their voice and they are suffering. And, I've done some real tough races. I mean, I really have. And that always in the back of my mind is, grow up. This is not tough. You can stop at any point. They can't leave. And it's the same with people. There's people suffering everywhere. There's starvation, pain, torment, fear. They can't just put their hand up and say, actually, I'd like to go back to the hotel now. I've had enough, and you've got to get things in perspective. And and realise that. So although it's been hard, and the only person, if I'd have not done it, the only person I'd have been cheating is myself and the animals. There's no point in, if I'm not going to invest 100%, there's no point in doing it. I'll go away and do something else. So it's not been easy. It's been pretty brutal. And I know sometimes, I don't know if you actually, or any of your listeners, if anyone is listening, understands this, but I've gone out on my long runs on Sunday and I've walked to the end of the drive almost crying at the thought of another 28-mile run and then get home and do the animals. A complete fatigue. I used to, very often I'd I only eat one meal a day. And I'd eat that meal in bed. I'd be so tired and I'd fall to sleep chewing it. I'd be that tired. And but I knew that it was the only way. I mean, you've got to push hard to achieve. And when you do actually listen to some of the podcasts now that marathon runners do put out there, unless you're a very, very lucky person, there is no cheat way to running 26.2 miles or beyond quickly. It's tough. You've got to put that effort in training, and it's very easy to, kind of read the articles, run your best marathon time with 3 easy sessions a week and never break a sweat. Well, you might do if your best marathon time's 10 hours and you're hoping to get down to 45, but, it's not going to happen if you're wanting sub 3s or sub 250s or whatever. It's not going to happen. You've got to really push. And as I say, it doesn't help with my knee in that I wouldn't say I'm in pain. I am in pain when I run, especially when you get about 20 miles in a road race, because you're literally in one position all the time. And it's that shock through the system that does punish my knee. But I know when I stop, the pain will stop. I know it's not an injury that I'm damaging. It's just an inconvenience that I carry. But yeah, I was told that I would never walk properly, let alone run. I can argue now that I can hardly run now. I've never considered myself to be a runner. I am an animal advocate, advocating for animals through athletics. That's all I am.
Yeah, because using that advocacy in that way, you've taken something that, although you are amazing at, although you don't think it, you've taken something that you are great at and used it to as a voice for, the voiceless, who, because if there's nothing else you're running a sanctuary at the same time, and then using your one skill to then raise money, raise awareness to what's going on in all of these industries, which most people are very unaware of. And obviously people have very big misconceptions about veganism anyway, and think, we're all weak, fragile, and we're going to break if we don't drink our milk. And then someone like you appears, absolutely crushing it. And then it kind of demystifies all those myths, because it then shows that this doesn't exist. Like these myths about us, being weak or we don't have athletic abilities. It's all in the bin, because you're then up there with the elite athletes as well, and smashing these marathons. And not even marathons. Your marathons weren't good enough for you, apparently, because then you had to go harder.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, they were kind of good enough for me in terms of I was raising some interest funds for the sanctuary, and people were writing articles about me, rather embarrassingly. I think I was nominated for Inspirational Woman of the Year in one of the major national newspapers. My mum, rather embarrassing, like mums do, went and bought about 50 copies home. And I looked at it, and within a second, I just threw it down. And I said, "What's the matter?" I said, "They've talked about my illness. They've talked about firefighting. They've talked about the sanctuary. They haven't mentioned veganism." And there was a genuine reluctance in the press and media to mention veganism. I mean, really, really was. I remember in, I think 2006, when I was doing the London Marathon, they used to have the phone-ins at the start where you could phone in and ask an expert a question. So it was contrived that one of my supporters would ring in, and I think it was Tracy Morris who was doing the she was the expert. And they asked, "Do you think any of the runners on the Elite Start could be?" Because this is when the Elite Start, you went 45 minutes ahead of the men and the main field. So it was a small group of runners. Do you think any of the ladies on this start could possibly be vegetarian or even vegan? And the answer was, oh, no, you need meat and dairy products for this kind of level of achievement. And I thought, after a few years of literally, and I can't tell you how I have pounded myself to get these times. I really have never missed a session, because if you're doing a real block of marathon training, I do 3 speed sessions a week, but you can't miss one and do 2 back to back. You've got to have the recovery in there, and it's all got to be. So it was literally set in stone what I would be doing day in, day out. And it was hard. I mean, I've had no life because of it. What with that and looking after the animals and being on a retained firefighting buzzer, there's not a lot of time for anything else in there, believe you me. In fact, at one point, I lived in, coming up to a marathon, I used to inhabit a caravan away from people and say, please do not come near me, because I do not want to get ill right now, because I can't do my best for the animals if you've got a virus or anything like that. So I was known as a hermit, I think is the correct phrase, a running hermit. But after a few years, I thought, well, okay, I've done what I can do. I'm on the elite starts. I was literally getting invited to, I got invited to like the Amsterdam Marathon by Jos Herman, and you get, literally, you're tucking your vest into your knickers and putting your plimsolls on. That's how I run and train at home. I can never find my running kit. I don't wash it every day or anything like that. It would literally run up the road without me. Sometimes I'm looking for socks and I've got to get out. The food delivery is going to be in. And I'm doing that. And then the next minute, you're getting off a plane in Amsterdam. You've got Jos Hermans waiting for you. It takes you back to the hotel, and the first person you see in the foyer is Haile Gebrselassie. And you're thinking, what's going on in my life? And indeed, when I went to the Amsterdam Marathon in 2005, a funny story is that I got all the emails from Jos about what to do for sign-on. And you just go to a little room in the hotel and they give you a number and it's all lovely. And, And I went to the little room in the hotel, and the guy looked up from the desk as if to say, can I help you? I said, yeah, I've come to sign on for the race. He said, sign-on's at the Olympic Stadium. And I'm thinking, oh, heck, I'm looking stupid here. That's how much of a marathon runner I don't look. I don't look like a marathon runner at all. I'm a bit beefy for a marathon runner, if you get my drift. In fact, I was so pleased when Charlotte Purdue address this issue as well. I don't probably look like a marathon runner, but I am one, and she's obviously really, really good. So I said, I think I've got to sign on here. And he went, no, it's definitely the Olympic Stadium. I said, I've had an email, I'm fishing it out of my pocket, getting desperate, from Jos Herman, and he told me to come in. He looked at it and he said, you're on the elite start? I went, yeah. And he started to say, well, what's your best time? And, I said, whatever I've run. And he said, yeah, actually, gosh, I'm sorry. I didn't realise, you could run relatively well here. And I came in the top 10 of Amsterdam, and that's Kenyans and Ethiopians beyond you. And, I didn't look like a marathon runner, let's put it like that. But I got my vegan runner top on, very proud, and I got to sit next to Haile Gebrselassie on the bus and warm up with him, and I spent Friday evening with him, and he was great. A wonderful chap, and really, really wanted to help inspire. And I know that he actually said to me, although we're different, we're basically, our running is both, we're doing it for the same reason. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you were doing it like half an hour quicker than me, plus. And he said, he didn't need to move up to the marathon after his Olympic successes, but he was doing it for his people. A lot of people in Ethiopia depend on these runners, the Kenyans, the Ethiopians, the Ugandans even, to bring employment and affluence and prosperity to their countries. And that's what was motivating him at the time. It was motivating him to be a lot quicker than me, I have to say, at the time, but never mind. And he invited me out the next morning, Saturday morning, on his little training group, just to warm up for the race the following day. And I don't think I've ever felt so, I was tired because their training pace is like pushing pace, but just so, I don't know, it was just like a dream come true for me, and it inspired me the next day. And I don't have a lot of confidence as a runner. As I say, I train alone. I go to very, very few races because I can't get away from the sanctuary very, very easily. So I could have literally gone to a local race every weekend and won, and loads. That was not why I was running. That wasn't going to have the impact when you get the chance to speak to people and say, what are your running credentials? Oh, I've come top 20 in London, come top 10 in Amsterdam. It's no good going and saying, oh, I've won the Tiptree 10. Doesn't have that same, impact. I'm not saying it's not great if you can do that, but for me, you can have a very short soundbite piece of time to actually get your message across. The important thing also about achieving the elite starts, if anybody is a runner out there, that on the smaller races tend to be slower courses. To run your best time, you've got to be in a big race because they're designed and geared to run quick times. But if you're in the middle of the field, you can't necessarily fulfill your potential because you've got to get around everyone else. So it's ideal to be on the front row so you can just set off and run at your pace. But after a few years, it was getting a little bit I was getting a bit frustrated. Yeah, I don't think people are interested in the veganism. I need to either drop it or take it in another direction. And it was at that time that I'd won a lot of marathons, around the world. I'd broken course records and done stuff like that. And some guy that I'd met, Paul, he actually said, look, Fiona, you've done it all. Go and do Marathon des Sables. What's that? Well, it's this tough race in the desert. And if you can do that, you're proving that you're real, you really can crack on as a vegan. And I was actually the first known ethical vegan woman to actually do that race because obviously it's a week-long stage race in the Sahara Desert and it's tough. You have to carry all your supplies in a backpack for the week, and they give you a limited water supply and basically a tent roof at night, and that's all you get, and then you're left to your own devices. The problem is, back in 2012, there weren't all the synthetic products. Expedition Foods, forget, there was nothing. I'm sick to death of my baker bars and pine nuts by the end of the week. And my sleeping bag was monumental. You've never seen anything as big. My pack was bigger than me. I was carrying a 30-litre pack. It was massive. And it was like dwarfing me. I looked like some kind of, lost sea turtle that's got this great big thing on the back. And the week before the race, actually, I actually fractured 2 toes at the sanctuary. So I got this challenge of going to the toughest foot race on the planet, as they were billing it, with 2 fractured toes. And I'm thinking, probably not a good idea, but I didn't know much about the race because I never do much investigation into anything. I just go for it. That's it. I didn't do any particular training. I got all this gear that you have to have. I didn't know what to do with it. A lot of people saying, "Oh, Fiona, you don't need to take those poles with you. You'll be all right. You can run like really quick marathons. You don't need that." And I thought, no, I better take the walking poles because actually, I think I'm going to need them. And I did need them indeed, because when I got out there, I could hardly get my foot in my shoe with the broken toes before the race. You have the shoes that are a little bit big because your feet swell in the desert. But I mean, mine was swollen anyway, the right one was. And it was a tough experience, let's put it like that. I know on the long stage, I was with a group of people and they decided they were going to have a rest. So I took the bandages off my foot and had a look what was going on under there because I was in so much pain, it was ridiculous. And you could see the bone in my little toe sticking out. It was that bad. And I said to the guy I was with, Paul, who was this ex-military, really posh bloke, very nice. I said, Paul, get your head torch on my foot and see what you make of this. And he just said, well, at first glance, Fiona, I'm not an expert. But it looks like the bone's sticking out. So, oh my God. And I didn't show the doctors on the race or anything like that. So we bound it up with gaffer tape and hoped that I could get through the marathon stage and finish that stage the next day. And I did. And I finished mid-pack. I didn't do too badly. And I just fell in love with it. And I just thought, this is home for me, this kind of punishment. And, I did it for the animals and nobody knew. I mean, obviously a doctor knew, my family knew, and a few of my friends knew I'd got these broken toes. But there were so many people from around the world, because you can send messages to runners and they deliver them to the tents at night, saying how inspiring it was and I was doing it for the animals and keep going for the animals. I thought, yeah, I am in pain, but I'm not in pain and terror like the animals that I'm trying to give a voice to. So, I don't flatter myself at any point. I could have packed up. It was very difficult. And I have seen people in that race pull out on the last day because their feet are just mashed. They've got no skin. I know people have to have skin grafts on the undersoles of the feet after that race. You get sand, you get swollen feet, and it's a Molotov cocktail of disaster. But I decided that I would like to give it a crack the next year without the fractured toes. And indeed, the race did say, okay, you can come back. We know you've had a rough ride, but I did rescue a lady who was really, really struggling, a lady in my tent. And she packed up, sadly. She was in a lot of trouble. But that is the spirit of these races, helping other competitors. So they said, look, come back next year and give it your best shot. And I was going to do that. But the same friend at the time said, no, Paul, he jumped in again. I don't know whether he's a friend. If I've got friends who recommend these things, what do my enemies suggest I do? But anyway, he said, why don't you, you've done it. You've done MDS. You've got the medal. Just, you've done that. That's old hat now. You've done it. Go and do the polar marathons, the Antarctic and the North Pole Marathon. And I actually thought at that point, there cannot be a marathon at the North Pole. That is ridiculous. How can you have a marathon at the North Pole? That's stupid. It must just be basically somewhere in, say, northern Norway, and it'd be about a 10K, maximum half marathon, because you couldn't possibly do a marathon and you couldn't be at the North Pole. And I looked into it, and sure enough, there's a marathon at the North Pole. Well, there was at the time. And I thought, marathon, North Pole, subliminally, it's all going through in my brain. If you want to prove that I've got a brain, it's in there somewhere. It's very small, but I kind of think, well, if you're cold and you come in from the cold, you say, it's like North Pole out there. Well, and if you say you're tired, worn out, feel like I've run a marathon, put the two together. You've run a marathon at the North Pole. That has got to be definitive proof positive without a doubt that as a plant-based vegan athlete, it's not prohibitive in any way to the most extreme, and we're talking extreme endurance events. So I looked into doing the race, and basically it was far too expensive for me to even consider. So I knocked it on the head. And then the race organizer contacted me. I think it was about Christmas Eve that year, and said, if you'll come and do it, I'll give you a place. So it was like, game on. I'm going to the North Pole and I'm going to run a marathon. I hadn't really thought about it when I got up. I mean, honestly speaking, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean,
Did you at least have the equipment for it before you went?
Well, no, I didn't. I mean, I had some stuff that, you'd sourced in a charity shop. That's where I get everything from, and then the clothing manufacturers, the technical clothing manufacturer called UVU, they contacted me and said, would you wear our stuff? And like really expensive stuff, like jackets at 2,500, 3,000 and whatever, and trousers, really dear. I said, yeah, okay. I got out there though, and I was horrified. We went to Svalbard, and then we had to fly to the North Pole in a small Russian jet. And I hadn't thought about the landing. This guy's explaining to me that if you land on ice, and there can be like a tsunami effect underneath the ice, and the plane can just, if there's any weakness in the ice, it can just go through, and you're then sinking in the Arctic Ocean. All right, not ideal, is it? But anyway, I got Percy Little Bear with me, so I thought I'll be fine. He always cheers me up. And we flew out to the North Pole, and I listened to what the other competitors had done in preparation. Some had been training in industrial freezers. I've got, no word of a lie, I got a pair of £10 mittens. That's all I got for my hands. These little cheap mittens, buffalo mittens. What am I doing here? What am I doing? I mean, these are all really good extreme endurance athletes. I just look like some sort of fool, amateur. But anyway, I thought, they left me at the North Pole, and then they went back to the rest of the runners, and I'm laid on my bed, delirious at this point, in this really, really hot tent. They put you in a really, really hot tent because the methodology is behind it, and the idea is that you can't warm up when you get cold in those temperatures, so you have to literally go into something that's so hot. I was sweating, and I was only wearing a long T-shirt, and it was like dripping off me. And I'm laying there and I'm thinking I'm delirious. I can hear a dog barking. I must be kind of coming in and out of consciousness now back at the sanctuary. Anyway, I decided I was going to go and investigate. So I donned up in that 50 layers, went out into the North Pole. We were actually as near to the North Pole as they can set a base up that's safe with the ice being strong enough. And sure enough, there's this Russian guy with a dog that's barking. And I said, oh, what you got a dog here for? And he said, well, it's to alert us if polar bears are in the area. And I'm going, like, Miss Stupid. I said, how does it do that? And he said, well, it barks. It's barking, yeah. And it's like, yeah, oh, yeah, the camp very often gets, raided by polar bears. And I thought, well, do you know what? I set off in the race. I won it by a massive margin, fastest woman to ever run. And never really thought about it. In fact, the only pictures the BBC managed to get of me were me like looking like a little Duracell bunny, running along, falling over and getting up and running along again. I mean, I never look very glamorous at all when I'm running. I did the same in the Antarctic race, got to the finish line and fell over. It's like very, very, I'm always on the floor. I spend more time on the floor than I do on my feet. When I was out at the North Pole, I actually saw I've got no right to be here. I shouldn't be here. This is not a good thing to be doing. I'm only doing it to try and genuinely raise awareness because this is the extremes I've had to go to bring validity and credibility to veganism. If I die and if I get eaten by a polar bear here, that's probably my choice of ways of going. I won't mind that if it was going to be.
It's quite a cool way of going as well.
Yeah, she got eaten by a polar bear. The animals that she loved consumed her and carried her off into the Arctic tundra. That would have been fine by me. And anyway, I won the race, and I didn't really know how I run a 4-hour marathon or whatever I ran at the North Pole, but I did. And then one of the other competitors who were a lot more versed in this kind of ultra running. The only time I spend thinking about running is when I'm doing it. As soon as I get home, kit goes off on a radiator for whenever I'm running next or wherever, and I get on with doing the animals. I don't really know what UTMB is or any of those things. I don't have a fancy diet. I don't do anything special for running. When I went to MDS, all I've ever done is take the salt tablets that they tell you. I've never had all this, electrolyte analysis and blood sweat. I've never had any of that. I think it's rubbish. Well, I don't. It's fine for some people. It's just not for me. And one of the other competitors said, you are really good. You should do the world record, the 7, fastest woman to run a marathon on the North Pole and, every continent. And I thought, yeah, right, I'll do that. And I got home and then I thought, no, I won't because it's going to cost a lot of money and I haven't got any. I don't need everything I've got for the animals. But it kind of bugged me in the back of my mind. We got to about August. And at that point, I'd got very little time to actually cram a marathon in on every continent. And I just said to my mum, if I could break a world record for the animals, that surely has got to, vegan athlete goes off, does these extreme events, wins a lot of them, and then surely that's got to fly. My mum and dad they haven't got anything left because they've given everything to the animals and they still do. So they got the property and they offered to remortgage it so I could go off and try and break this record. And then I decided it was game on. I would try and achieve. In the end, I broke 3 world records, and that was purely because to validate what I was doing, Guinness said very, very strict criteria for this. You've got to be in proper marathons. It's not just a marathon distance that you can rock off and do. These have got to be proper registered races with race officials, and you need a runner either side of you, validating it's you that's actually doing all the running, or you need somebody to photograph you at every kilometre point to prove it's you in the race. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going on my own. I can't do that. Percy's not very good with a camera, Percy Bear. They said, well, the only other thing you can do is actually win them or place in these races, and then the race will do it for you. If you're on the podium and you've won it, that proves that the race, you've actually completed because they're actually doing the validating. So I thought, oh God, now I've got to go and try and win them or place in them, and so the race. And I managed to do that. And I did injure myself very, very badly in the Atacama Desert for the South American leg of it. It was a 14,500 feet altitude race. Again, I hadn't really thought about running at 14,500 feet in a volcano tundra up a mountain. It was just like,
you're not looking at the maps beforehand to kind of
I'm not.
work out what's going on.
Even when we got off the plane, some people had to literally get back on the plane and go back from San Pedro, Calama. They couldn't stand the altitude at 10,000 feet, and we were going up to 14,500 to do this marathon. There were people out on the course lost and just in a terrible state, because obviously running at that kind of altitude, trying to get around a marathon, literally in the middle of nowhere, is not an easy ask. And I rolled my leg on a rock, and I kind of dislocated my knee. I do that quite a lot. I can actually slip very easily. That's one thing I don't like to do, slipping, because it dislocates, and because I've got no kneecap. And I was in terrible, terrible trouble. I was on a drip, pain relief, and I thought, game over. 4 days' time, I cannot go to Antarctica, because I got to then fly. I combined these two marathons because it was the cheapest way of doing it. I got to fly down to Punta Arenas, get on a plane and go out to Antarctica and run a marathon. And I thought, no, I can't do it. I can't walk. And I couldn't bend my leg. I remember practicing trying to bend my legs, standing up and down in the toilets of the plane, trying to flex my leg and like, I can do it. I can do it. Up and down, trying to bend this knee. And got to Punta Arenas, and I thought, right, I have to buy some walking poles and try and walk this baby out. And I'm thinking, how long does it take to walk a marathon? And I think, oh my Lord in heaven, 8-9 hours I'm going to be out there. And I went down to Antarctica, and there were lots of people, what I thought really, really good runners. But I thought, just ignore that, because they're going to go off and they're going to do their thing, and you are stuck now with this bad knee. And when the start of the race, I remember a lot of Japanese people, for some reason, South Koreans and Japanese, like these races, extreme races. And there was one bloke, he was wearing a Santa suit. He'd got proper running stuff on him, so he'd got a Santa suit on top of his running stuff. And even he disappeared into the distance when the race started. And I'm thinking, it's going to be a long day at the office, this is, for me. And I thought, after about half a mile of this trudging, I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to have to start and try and run. I'm just going to have to, because I'm just getting cold and it's awful. And I started to run. And after a while, the pain went off. And then I started to catch people. And I started to catch, it was 2 loops, 13.1 mile loops. And I started to catch everyone. And then the woman that was in there that was tipped to win it, she was running with 2 male athletes to protect her and mentor her. And I saw her in the distance. And I thought, game on here. Went straight past her. And I didn't look back. And I did the same thing again in that race, and broke course record and whatever. I don't know how I did it. I do know how I did it. I was just thinking about the animals and why I'm doing this. I didn't want to let anyone down, and then least of all, I didn't want to let the animals down. I've always been very, very well aware that if you fail as a vegan, I think it would have been made headlines. If you achieve as a vegan, it wasn't doing. I remember when I got back from one race in Namibia, and it had been a tough race and a multi-stage and done well in it, and somebody from the local radio rang me, and I thought, stupid me, I thought they might be ringing me to ask about the race. And they weren't. They were ringing me to make a comment about a lady who died on Everest, because they presumed I must know her because she was vegan.
Oh, yeah, but there's only like 7 of us in the world, so we all know each other.
We all eat this like really bizarre green soup, and we all interconnect telepathically, and we must know her. And I said to him, I didn't know her, didn't you? No. But I do know that Everest is a really dangerous place to be, because I had a friend sadly pass away there the year before, a guy who was a really, really good climber I met through running, called Basti. And it's a dangerous place, and that's probably why the lady died. And I would assume it most likely had nothing to do with lifestyle choices and what she ate. And he went, oh, right, okay. What? And then he actually said to me, as if he was so desperate, he said, what? There was a case about a child in Italy that was malnourished, and it was because the parents were bringing it up vegan. And he tried to, well, what about that? I said, well, again, I don't know the context. I don't know the circumstances. So I can't comment. And he was like really disappointed. I thought, do you want to talk about me, a vegan who hasn't died on Everest and isn't malnourished and has done really, really well in this ultra-stage race in Namibia? It's like, not really, no. And, you know, so I've...
and apparently you speak for all vegans now, so...
Yeah. That's the way it is. And it's just, you know, you can't do anything about it. You can only be the best version of yourself and hope that people do look. And I know that when Keegan contacted me about making the film, it was like, you know, he said he wanted to make a really inspiring film about somebody who achieved and, you know, really positive. And I'm saying, oh, that's fantastic. Who is it? It's with you. And I'm thinking, why would you want to make a film about me? I'm not anything special at all and not really interesting. And he was saying, you know, he'd made Cowspiracy and What the Health, and they'd all had very, very negative content in terms of exploitation and the animals. And now he wanted to make a film that was positive and saying this could be the positive side, the flip side to veganism. You could be like this lady or do this. And I didn't really want to make a film, to be honest with you. It's not my bag at all to be in front of a camera, or I'm much happier just chugging along behind the scenes doing what I can for the animals. I'm not a self-promoter in any way, shape or form, because actually I feel very humbled by the subject matter that we're trying to address, and it just doesn't seem right to me that you would see.
I feel like as well, like most people, like they go in for, like, you know, a PB or a medal or a trophy or something like this, but you don't care about that. You're just caring about, like, the advocacy for the animals. You're not caring about, like, a trophy or your new personal best. Because, like, when you go into a lot of these like runs and marathons and ultra, there's a lot of ego there. It's a lot of ego to be the best, and, like, you know, like you're fighting each other out the way just to kind of get to be the best. And you know, some people are looking for that new, like, you know, this new medal for the wall, and it is purely ego. Whereas there's nothing there for you. It's literally just you're very humble and zero ego about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what you would call winning a race, what you would call a medal, what you would call a trophy. If you think you can possibly go into a race and influence someone else to not harm an animal, or to be a better person, or to help address the issues of the environment, or, you know, possibly influence a situation where a person could have a better life who's in a terrible situation, that would be a better trophy than a piece of tin or something you can hang around your neck. And there was a case in 2014. I went back to Marathon des Sables, and they've changed it a lot since these days. And you literally arrived in the desert. They dumped you off a bus. You went round and to a load of tents and said, "Is there room in this tent for me?" "No." "Okay, room in this tent for me?" "Yeah." "You come in here." So I found a tent, and there was one guy in it, and he said, "This half is taken and this half is free." So I scurried into the corner of the other half and set my bag out, you know, my possessions and my Percy Bear and whatever, and then BBC correspondent Tom Borridge came into the tent. He was in a party of these four guys that were making a documentary for the BBC about the race. And my side of the tent, I had a barrister lady, another lady who sadly didn't, Moira, she didn't get out of the dunes on the first day. She was sent straight into the dunes on the first day, and she literally just couldn't cope. And the guy called Mike Julien, who had cancer, was chemotherapy. And he really struggled. He was there to prove to others who were suffering that this disease does not need to define you and what your expectations are. So there was a big controversy as to whether he'd be allowed to compete. And he had a letter from his consultant, and they said, "Okay, you can go out there." But he was really struggling. Now, I was out the front flying. I've never felt so good in a race in my entire life. I'd been back. I'd decided that I was just going to let it go and just run. I'm always a bit scared of running. I remember when I went to Great North Run, and I'm there looking at other runners, and I got a top 20 in the Great North Run, which I was pleased with. And but I'm looking at somebody in a Superman suit, thinking they look good, or I mean, I literally don't. I'm literally not very confident until I get going, and then I'm still not very confident. But anyway, I was sort of placing 4th and 5th woman in the stages, and completing in about 4 hours or something. Mike was on cut-off. He was like 10 hours. So when you get back to your tent, if you can get back relatively early, like lunchtime-ish, you got time to cook your meal, or put it out in the sun to cook, wash your socks in a bit of all these little luxuries that you don't think of because you're in the same gear every day, and get a proper rest. And Mike wasn't getting that. I mean, I was in bed asleep by the time Mike was getting back to camp. Anyway, on the second, the runner format, the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday are relatively short stages. Like, they could be up to a marathon. Then on Wednesday, you hit the long stage, and it could be 100k or around 80 to 100k. And he came back, I think it was on the Monday, and he was crying. He said, "I'm packing up. I can't do it. He said, "Even if I do tomorrow, and I get back feeling like this, I'm never going to get through the long stage. Never, ever can I do that, be out there." And I don't know. I don't know why I said this. It just came out. It wasn't contrived. I wasn't thinking about it. Everybody in the tent knew where I was placed in the race. And I said, "Look, Mike, if you get through tomorrow and you want to do the long stage, I will mentor you around it, if no one else will." And I'm not going to lie, I'm not an angel, I'm not a saint. The next day I had a really good run, and I love the desert, and I love running in the desert. And I went to bed, and I thought, Mike's not back, is not on cut-off. In a way, I was worried about him, very worried about him, but I knew that the race would look after him if he pulled out. And in some respects I was relieved, because I thought, tomorrow I'm going well, and I'm going to hit the long stage, and I'm really going to push on and see what I can do. And then there was some clapping at the finish line. So what you tend to do is, when there's a real furore, you get up and you go and have a look, and you clap the people in on the last finishers. And Mike was there, and he literally came straight over to me. I offered to take his pack from him, who was struggling, and he just said, "Does your offer for tomorrow still stand? Because I want to try it." And I said, "Yeah, of course it does." And I took my race away. I went on the next day, and I was the first home in the marathon stage after the long stage. But people say, "Do you regret it?" No, it was the best thing I could have ever done. Better than any medal, better than any time, better than any trophy. Because actually you've done something, and you don't know how that action influences others then. For the people out there that were looking at Mike and will have got great inspiration. He went on to finish the MDS. And it's not like you don't always have to have tangible evidence for what you've done, like payment. You've just got to have the faith that you're doing the right thing, and because you're doing the right thing, there's a potential for other right things and goodness to come from it. You'll never know, but if you stop believing, then you just become one of the crowd, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, I'm not running for those reasons. I'm not running to be. In fact, I know when I was doing a county championship race, and one of my friends, Keith, he was waiting with a water bottle for me at a certain place. And he said, I was stunned to see, because at the time it wasn't far into the race, and I offered it to the lady next to me. And he said, I couldn't believe you offered her your water, because it's competition, and I got some water and she hadn't. And you know what? For any runner out there, that I've never raced a marathon. I've never looked and thought, oh, I better put a sprint on here, or, I mean, you literally, you know what I mean? You're racing yourself, the course, the challenge, the fatigue. I mean, I know Henrik Romala used to kind of do a bit of fartlecking backwards and forwards, but I'm not that. I mean, I've been to technical meetings. I've sat at the back when they're discussing when they're going to make the push and 30k, I'm going to really drive on here. And I'm thinking 30k, I mean, only thing that's going to need pushing is me. And, Mum and I doing noughts and crosses and trying to pretend we're all serious about, And I'm thinking, no, I'm just going to set off at a pace, I hope, by the skin of my teeth and my toenails I can hang on to. That's the best advice I can give to anybody in a marathon. You can always lose more than you can gain in a marathon. You're not going to suddenly go, well, I thought we were going to do a 5 hour and Bobby made it with 2.5. You're not going to fluke a 2, it's not going to happen. You can lose a lot of time in races. Now I'm going to say something really controversial now, but people ask a lot about, well, what do you eat before a race? Well, pretty much the same as I eat any other day. I don't carbo load. In fact, I don't eat a lot the day before a race. I might consume calories via fluid, but I don't eat a lot. I don't want a lot of bulk, because all I'm going to say now, and I'm going to be as polite as possible, rather than focusing solely on what you consume, what goes into your body before a marathon, consider what is going to come out of your body and make sure that it's not going to want to come out. Bearing in mind, if you're on the elite start line, you got the Portaloos a minute beforehand. Make sure that it's not going to need to come out right before or during the race, because then you are going to lose a lot of time and you're not going to make it up. So in a marathon, for me particularly, the goal is to start and finish at a relatively steady pace, whatever that pace might be, because you can lose, as I say, much more than you can ever think about gaining.
And earlier said you only eat one meal a day. So when you are preparing for a marathon, is that still one meal a day? Like, are you still, or are you upping it prior?
No, I eat one meal a day. I genuinely do. And people very often don't believe me. I know we had when I first moved up here, we did Airbnb, first year, 2018. And we had people staying on Christmas Eve. And one guy, said I think he was up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he saw me walking around, and he said, "Oh, you're going to, I can't start the animals now." And I hadn't started. I'd been out for a run that morning, done a couple of hours, and then I said I was going to do the jobs outside. And at lunchtime, I don't quite know why he kind of wouldn't go home, this bloke. I don't know why. My mum's like, "Well, do you want some lunch or something?" And he said, "Are you going to have lunch, Fiona?" I said, "No, I don't eat lunch. I don't eat breakfast and I don't eat lunch." And I said, "I'm going for another run," because that's what I do on Christmas, like treat myself. And he was like, "How can you do that?" And it was really funny, actually. I was in Siberia, as you do, because I got to do a marathon in Asia, and I wanted to go to Omsk. Had got a marathon. It was a big race, and I've obviously been on the elite start. I was with the Kenyan coaches and the Ethiopians, and at the press conference that day, and the Saturday before the race on Sunday, and they laid on a big lunch for us. And one of the Kenyan coaches said, "Are you coming to the lunch?" I said, "No, I don't eat lunch." And I was a bit reluctant to say that. So should I have said, "Oh yeah, I've got this specialist"? I mean, I've had water bottle. Like when you're in you give your water bottles and you put little ribbons around them and they put them on the elite stands. The first time I ever experienced that, they said, "We'll collect your water bottles." And I'm thinking, well, I ain't got anything to put in them, so I put plain water. Just to look like I knew what I was doing, and I was like, plain water. And I've never ever during a marathon. Oh well, I have once, but I won't go into details of what happened because it wasn't pleasant in the lift after the race. I've never ever took anything on board apart from in Adelaide when I ventured into the territory of a gel. Don't even ask. You don't want to know. You just don't want to know. I got in the lift with my mum, and she said, "The drains in this hotel, Fiona, they are disgusting." Not the drains, Mum. there was severe problems in the stomach department. But I'd only flown into Australia the night before, and I got to be up at 7 the next morning to do the marathon. And I got a place in it, and I don't think I had time to get jet lag because I were home. It was like, and I remember getting stopped in Adelaide Airport, and this guy was saying, hello, ladies, are you looking for the baggage carousel? No, we're looking for the way out. Well, no baggage? No. Are you going on somewhere? No. Do you live here? No. And I can see him, he's practically putting the rubber gloves on and thinking, what are these two crazy women doing here?
I said, it sounds suspect when you come into Australia with nothing.
Yeah, it did. And I said, no, we haven't got anything. I'm going home tomorrow. He said, you've come from the UK for a day trip to Australia. I'm thinking, this is getting I said, don't worry. I've got a very good reason for being here. I'm running a marathon in the morning. And he just said, go. Just go. I don't want to hear any more of this. But yeah, back to the story. I've never actually took anything on board during a marathon, a road marathon, other than plain water. If you don't train with it, don't race with it is my motto. But I do train hard. And the ideology I had behind my training was that you're not going to race hard if you don't train hard. You've got to push yourself very, very. You've got to be tough. You've got to know what it feels like to literally want to almost pass out and die. Because if you want the best time you can get, you're going to feel like that. You're going to feel absolutely 100% spent when you finish. And if you do these little kind of dalliances and then suddenly you put yourself into a race environment, you're not going to be able to cope. But yeah, there's never anything I never think too much about what I'm going to do. I mean, it's like when you get into these multi-stage races and they give you your road book, they call it, and it's all like, everybody goes back to the tent and you can hear all these kind of screams and horror when people, oh my God, look what's going to happen on day 4, we've got to climb this jebel. I'm thinking, look, hang on a minute, get real here. You're not going to be out the front of the race with the Moroccans, so you're going to be able to follow on. Whatever it's going to be. And the only thing you're going to do is stress yourself out and waste energy now by fretting about it. You're just going to have to, you can't suddenly go and do a bit of dribble training or think, I haven't done enough training, I'll have to go and do a bit more training. The race starts tomorrow. So all you can do is relax and enjoy and accept rather than just stress. So I've never actually looked at my road book. And I was just like, just get on with it, to be honest with you, and just like take what comes, because you will be literally thinking to yourself, I'm not going to make that climb in like 20k. I'm not going to do it. So if it's there, you've got to get. It's like you've got to find a way of getting over it, round it, under it, through it. You've just got to do it. But yeah, that's pretty much what my life is like. I don't think too much about anything, whatever, and I'm very, very good at doing laborious, mundane, manual tasks for a long period of time. So I've just kind of adapted that to the running, because in essence, running a sanctuary is not glamorous. It's really, really hard work. There's a lot of work, a lot of worry, a lot of grief, and a lot of physical challenges. But it's worth it because you're helping others, and that's what my life is really about. And as I said, when the story about Mike, to help him and see him with his medal. My medals have never meant anything to me. When I went and did it again in 2017 and just give the medal to Keegan, I'm not really interested. I don't even particularly like races that give medals and stuff. Some people really enjoy having them. Keegan said, well, where's all your trophies? Where's all that? I don't know. Dog bowl down there might be one. I really don't know. Once I've done it, I've done it. I've done it for a reason, and I've done it for an historical portfolio that I can say I've been to the North Pole, I've run a marathon, I've won a marathon, I've done all this, and I've done it as a vegan, and I continue to do it as a vegan. And that has got to be proof positive that it is not. And people say controversial. There's nothing controversial. I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm just leading by example and saying, this is what I have done. This is my story. There's all this kind of research and evidence-based and controversy, and you could have problems here, you could have problems there. You're just creating a truth. in terms of saying that might be the case, but I've never experienced that, and I'm living proof, and I keep doing it.
Yeah, because after 50 years, you're still thriving. You're not just surviving, you are thriving. You are showing the world that like you can do all these physical feats on a completely plant-based diet, living a very vegan lifestyle when there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, I mean, but I do live a very, I've live a very basic lifestyle. I mean, I don't buy any products. I don't buy any, I'm not saying that this is not me advocating for anything. It's only just me explaining me and what I've done. So, for instance, it sounds awful. I don't use shampoo. I just put water on my hair. I don't. Well, I do. I mean, as you can probably guess, I've never been to the hairdressers. I don't fet myself in any way, shape, or form. I don't have any supplements or anything like that. I don't need anything. And people do focus a lot on diet. And I've been on these diet panels, athlete panels, and they're going into like, I went, what do you think? Keto or paleo, Fiona? I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I've dropped something. Quick, on your phone, what is keto diet? What does it mean? And amino acids and all that. I don't know. I really, I just eat a diet. I believe that people don't listen to the bodies enough. They don't. You're a unique individual. I mean, I don't have Garmin. I don't have Strava. I don't feel I need that sort of thing. I know I judge my own pace, and those things are fine, but they can't tell you if you're worried about a cow that's poorly. They can't tell you if you've got, if you're very fatigued because you've been up all night. They don't factor in those things. And I said to people, if I had something bleeping away on my wrist, I'd probably have a running injury because I'd be looking at it and I'd trip over and break my ankle or something like that. I rely a lot on just myself and self-knowledge. And isn't that the saying, know yourself? And everybody feels that they've got the right to judge everyone else, but they don't focus enough on actually knowing who they are.
That's true. Like nobody can tell you how you're feeling. You're the only one that knows exactly how you're feeling and how you are on that day, and like nothing can take that away from you. But do you ever actually sit down and just relax? Like, is there a moment that you actually, step away from running, or the sanctuary, and just kind of have a 5-minute chill?
Not really, no. No. I sit down with my mum at night and we have a meal together. We nurse my dad. We have been doing for 2.5 years. Who's in a bed in the lounge, and it's tough because it's completely 100% dependent on mum, who does most of it, and I help. And as I say, people focus on diet a lot, what you eat, and I say forget what I eat. Think about where I eat it, how I eat it. I eat food that is prepared with love, and it's consumed with the same love. It's locally sourced most because we get the veg from up the road, a little produce place that delivers. I'm not in fear of my life. I've got a roof over my head. I've not been displaced. I'm not living in a tent, frightened out, bewildered what's happened. I'm so lucky that it's not just about the food, it's about the context of the food. It's like if you were in fear of your life, if you were eating a banquet in a gilded palace, it wouldn't taste the same. And I think people take for granted things that are very, very important, and they fixate on things that are ultimately not important at all. So, yeah, I mean, I'm lucky to have enough food. I'm not scared about not having a meal the next day. Surely that's enough, at the end. I might be wrong. I might just be turning people off and making them think, she's mental. But that's honestly how I feel. Sometimes I just stop and I just think about suffering. And life's not perfect. I wish people's life would be, but there's got to be balance. There's got to be grief. There's got to be happiness. These are not bad emotions. This is a natural part of being a human being. There might be perfect moments in life, and they're the ones that you should learn to appreciate. So looking up and seeing the cows in the field and the sun on your face, that is a perfect moment. That's as good as it's going to get. When you think about the absolute suffering on this planet, and I'm talking animals and humans, unnecessary suffering because of the greed of others, it's too much to contemplate. Sometimes it's overwhelming. So I do think that I do bury myself in work, because at least then I feel that I'm doing it. The situation seems hopeless, but you're not helpless. Whilever you're working and moving forward and doing something positive, you might be making a difference. And if I didn't have that, I think I'd go mad. I think I couldn't stay sane. And I tend to not just, I don't look at social media. I'm not interested at all. But when you see things and hear things on the news, 260 people killed or flooding, it just washing over people like it's some, I don't know, film. That's really happening right at this very moment. Starvation, pain. I remember, I don't know why I remember certain things. Nobody, and I saw that, I don't normally watch this programme, and I turned it on and there was something with Ross Kemp, and he was in India, and there was a lady, she was dying on the street. She looked about 100 years old. She was 40 odd years old, and the people were walking round her. She got flies all over her, and she'd been a prostitute for 20 odd years, and she'd agreed to speak out. And this is years ago, and it's just stuck. That lady stuck with me. And it's just an articulation. But there's so much of that going on. And then you think about the pain in the, animals, I won't even say their lives, because it's not a life to live in a cage or be exploited, or the cruelty and the suffering, and then the fear and the terror. And you hear about, these Chinese pig units that are 9 stories deep, and they just live on concrete. And then you go up the fields and you see the excitement when you go up with some carrots and you hide them in the woods for the pigs, and they run off after they've had the breakfast. It's literally squealing with delight. And you think, why can't it be like that for all? Why can't it? And it isn't. It's not a fair world. And that's the one thing I always say to people: you're not the victim, they are. Really, please just remember that always. There's always many people worse off. And I think when you've travelled, especially, you realise that. I mean, most people think travelling is going on some cruise somewhere or going to some resort. That's not travelling. Travelling is really going out. I mean, when I was in Nepal, it was like, seeing how people are forced to exist. It's humbling, isn't it? And I just feel I've got an obligation to keep trying wherever you can. If you see an opportunity to make a difference, you've just got to grab it, because
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Like, it is taking every opportunity to try and make a difference, no matter how small or big it is. Those small things can make a difference in someone or somebody's life that you don't realize. And it's like those small things can compound over time and make something a lot bigger, but we may never know about it. You may never know that you've changed someone's life, because somebody may never have the right to tell you that. And it's nice knowing that can be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, people always seem to want a payback. I put this online and look at all the likes I got, or something like that. But it just, one person might see something and it might make that difference. I don't want people to write to me and tell me that you made a difference. I don't want any of that. All I want is, the blessing is that you can continue to keep doing it. The blessing is that you can keep going out and doing a run, that you can keep going out, that you've got your health. Health is ultimate wealth. At the end of the day, I look at some people and, I think there's me here. I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'll just go and run 25 mile a day for 25 days. That's all right. I'll fit that in somewhere along the line. And, people are almost imprisoned in their own bodies and their own ill health. now. And I've spoken out for a long time, and I've said, if people would make a simple lifestyle choice, and it is a simple and innovative lifestyle choice, it's almost like you can eat all this rubbish, but don't worry if it makes you poorly, because you can take all these medications to make you better. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. I'm not the brain of Britain. We're still looking for my brain up there. But surely it'd be easier to not consume the rubbish and not need the medications to make you better and just stay relatively healthy all your life. But that
you would think that's the consensus, but yeah, it's it goes over people's heads.
Yeah, and they think that, and it's like when you're a vegan and people say, if they're handing something round, or, I know when I've been at the fire brigade headquarters, and they like me having bacon sandwiches or whatever, ladies cook for the firefighters. You can't have these, can you? Yes, I can have them. I choose not to. That's the important thing. I choose not to. This is not a denial. This is not some self-flagellating denial syndrome that I've got, which says I am precluding myself from having all these lovely goodies and I'm going without. I'm not. I'm blessed. I'm the lucky one. I'm the one that's richer for this. I'm not denying anything. It's veganism to me is not a diet. Diet indicates denial. I'm on a diet. I've been craving chocolate. That sort of thing. It's not. I don't crave anything. This is a liberation. Life-enhancing liberation, and you are free to make the choice to do this. And for me, you're choosing the right path. So how lucky are we to be able to walk this path and to hopefully, possibly, encourage others to do the same? And I'm not a great articulator of anything, but I think actions do, for me, speak louder than words. And I've done it. I know what people say about veganism. I know that you had a lot of the usual celebrities who said they were vegan when it was the hot ticket, and now, I felt so ill, I've had to go back to having, and I haven't. That's not what I've had. That's not my experience. Because it saddens me that we're such a celebrity culture, that if a celebrity says something, everybody goes with it. But also, if a celebrity says something, everybody goes with it. So if they say they're going vegan, yeah, and then if they say they're not vegan, they tend to listen and go with that as well. So there can be great damage by associating celebrities to causes, I think.
I feel like, especially in the last, I'd say, few months, there's been quite a few celebrities that have spoken out against that they were living what they said was a vegan lifestyle, and have gone back on it, and it has caused damage to the community. Exactly. And I do feel like we're now in a culture where we listen to people's opinions and antidotes over actual science, and also ethics. You're only seeing a 30-second snapshot of somebody's life. So you don't know what they were doing in that time to, be feeling ill or be feeling rubbish. And most of the time, it's something that was probably a very easy fix. But it's just but they will take that as this 30-second clip as credibility that eating and living a vegan lifestyle is bad because it's one person's posted 30 seconds and we don't know their entire ins and outs of what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. And it's upsetting that it just ruins the whole community. It gives people even more of a chance to kind of hate us and speak out against us.
Yeah, well, that's what I've found, because obviously when you spent your lifetime trying to peacefully go about your business and do your best for the animals, I've not forced anything down anyone's throat, so to speak. I've just led by example and said, well, it might, this is what I've done. This is my story, and it continues to be my story. You might find it interesting, you might not, but you can't take away from the fact that it's there, that I'm there, and I've done these things on a vegan diet. And the real nutrition has been, honestly, for my soul, because I've known when I've stood on the start lines of any of these races, and I have been humbled to be there. I mean, I know I limp. Sometimes when they're panning across the cameras go across the front of the elite starts. And I'm thinking, oh, I hope you've got a wide angle on that, because I look like the love child of the Michelin Man and Mrs. Blobby, I do, compared to everybody else. You know, with my, and I'm not that big, you know, but I mean, I'm only about 7.5 stone. But I mean, you know, some of these top, you know, they're very slight, very tiny. And, but I've always known that I'm hoping that there's been minimal suffering going. The only suffering that I want to be on the performance I'm about to give will be my suffering, not that of an animal. I mean, you know, you get all these stories that people are eating ground up ostrich bones or whatever they're eating, anything to get the edge. It's not worth it. You know, it's just, to me, you know, it's just, yeah, as I say, I can hand it out to myself, but I can't imagine causing harm to, or willfully causing harm to any other creature, be it human or non-human. But I think there is a lot, you know, when you spent your life trying to live like that, and it can be snuffed out by one celebrity just saying, you know, some ridiculous thing. I went vegan and then my hair dropped out or something, you know, and then I wasn't vegan. It's very, very soul destroying, to be honest with you. But as I say, I don't look, I don't listen. All you can do is do your own thing, and in the confidence and the knowledge that you are doing your best. And at the end of the day, however long you've got to live, I mean, you could go out. I mean, I could go out now and drop dead. I don't know, but if you've done your best, there's no more you can do.
And yeah, I think everything that you've said, and how you articulated how you live and leading by example is such a beautiful way to live, and more people should be living like that, and just kind of living true to themselves, and obviously working for the animals, helping the animals in no matter what way they can do, even if it's like the smallest little changes. Everything does make a difference. And I think the one thing that I get reminded of you on a constant basis is the fact that, just before we round this off, that every time I ever do a park run, there's always a vegan runner, and that vegan runner is that, and those green t-shirts all down to you. So through, you know, England, Australia, the States, and Mexico, all the different places that I've done park runs, there's always been a few vegan runners there in that bright green.
It's incredible.
It really
is incredible. It really is. I mean, at the start of the vegan runners, there was literally just a couple of us. In fact, a lady recently got in touch, and because I don't do a lot on social media, I've got a little Patreon page that I have, which is much more private, specific for people who are interested. Because what I have found on the social media platforms, for me, if you're not interested in something, don't look at it. Don't look at it and then just feel the need to go piling in with abuse. You know, just don't look. Don't waste your time looking. So little Patreon is just specific for people who do are interested in kind of what I do and how I do it. And I've got one lady who was in the vegan runners on a peripheral basis at the start of the club, and then she's literally went off and did other things, and she's now come back to both the club and the sanctuary, supported a sanctuary. And she said at the beginning, she said, I couldn't work out how you were so good at running and just so amateur, and you still are. You're still doing the same thing. You're still that exact same person. She said it's pretty unusual that you're still doing everything that you were doing then, and it's because, honestly, it's what I've always believed in. And there is a bit of a responsibility. I've got one young guy who's on my Patreon, and he wrote and he said, you're the only thing that keeps me going to believe that there is good in the world, because there's so much evil. I find that really sad for young people, but I know I get where he's coming from. I really do get where he's coming from. So just to find a constant from somebody who's been doing something, I suppose, for years and years and years, and to suddenly look back and think, oh, that person's still there. They're still doing exactly what they were doing. Literally, I'm doing exactly what I was doing like 20 years ago. And that's got to be a testament to plants, hasn't it? It really has. I mean, you know, gorillas don't eat meat, you know, you can be strong. I don't know why there's this reluctance to embrace veganism. And I mean, a lot of people, it is just ignorance. I don't think I've ever eaten anything vegan, Fiona. Well, you've had a potato, haven't you? Oh, yeah, I suppose when you look at it like that. You get all that. I mean, you can't, I'm not a hostile person, so, I don't want to go in on a rant, but a lot of people just don't see things the way we do. And rather than being angry, I think you've got to do your best to encourage them and almost feel not sorry for them, but count your blessings that you have been able to find this lifestyle path. Because that's the one thing that I do notice when people that I speak to about veganism, they say the only thing, the bad thing about it, or the sad thing about it, is that I didn't find it earlier. And, obviously, I feel very lucky that I literally, it's been in me. I think it's in most people. They just don't have an opportunity, or, I don't know, some event in their life which allows it to come out, if you get my drift. And a lot of people, they cite things like peer pressure, family pressure, and I think they find it very interesting. I've kind of suffered from all those things. My grandparents, my dad and my sister even, they haven't been fully understanding, and I wouldn't say they've been, preventing me from being vegan, but it caused a lot of animosity in our family. But I do get it. I do get the problems that people have, and like with the running, I get the day-to-day problems, the motivation problems, and the fact that it's sometimes really, really hard to get out there, and you feel tired, and but it's we're all humans. We're all the same, basically. Deep down, we're all the same. We've got the same problems, the same joys. Nobody wants to fail, I think, if you set yourself out to succeed. It's just, as I say, I'm very driven. I don't like the reason I'm so driven. And I wish I didn't have to do what I do. I don't have to do it. I feel very blessed that I can.
That's beautiful. So just before I round this off, for people that want to help you, want to support the sanctuary, want to support and make sure it can carry on thriving for as long as possible, where can people find you to donate or help out in any way, shape or form?
Well, we've got a website, obviously, towerhillstables.org. You can go there and have a look. Percy Bear, my trusty assistant, he's got his little shop and his tombola going at Christmas. And everybody loves Percy, even though he's a big blundering fool. He's my alter ego, Percy Bear. Percy can say things that others can't. Keegan said that to me. Very, very clever of you having the bear. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I just like bears. What's clever here? So Percy Bear, you can help, you can support or share about my 625-mile challenge through December. We've kindly been given a doubling scheme for that, so any money I can raise will be doubled, so that's a maximum potential for the sanctuary. I've got things on Instagram and Facebook, but I think it's Fiona Oakes or Oakes Fiona or whatever. I don't go on there myself. I don't like it. I don't. It saddens me. I had to go to the local agricultural supplier yesterday to buy some glamorous shovels that we needed. Nothing exciting. And I went in. It was dark, and there were just 2 or 3 vans parked outside, obviously waiting for people who were in the shop, and they were all just staring at like zombies at screens. And I thought, this is really weird. Like when I go out running, I don't listen to music or anything in particular. I like to listen to the birds. I like to listen to nature. I like to be spatially aware. I like to listen to my breathing. I like that to be my time when you're free to just embrace the beauty around you, rather than having to have it, literally living life through a lens. I don't, probably just old fashioned, but I don't get what the addiction is to that. I think it's a lot. You go out and experience the wind, the rain, the snow, the sun. That's so beautiful. But anyway, back onto, because I do wonder. Yeah, I mean, anyway, just support, just share. I don't really, that's a lot of the time, I'm not a big seller of things. For me, the biggest prize of all is promoting veganism. The biggest prize of all would be not needing sanctuaries. the biggest prize for me would be empathy in the world. I'm always a bit reluctant to use the word compassion. Obviously, it is important, but compassion always to me indicates some sort of, I don't know, right to decide the destiny of others, and to be compassionate would indicate that you can choose the fate, and you choose to, in one direction or the other. For me, empathy, always thinking about the other person or individual or animal, is more important. To empathise with them, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, their emotions, is such a great thing. And if anyone is thinking about being vegan or being interested in just anything that I've said, that you don't need to send money, you don't need to write and praise me or anything like that. Just fulfill your own potential. Don't let life slip you by. Don't get sucked into this commercial media thing that goes on. Be yourself, and be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. And it is truly a blessing to help others. You'll get so much more reward from it than you will anything material. So yeah, I mean, obviously we need funds to keep the sanctuary going. That's no word of a lie. It's massively expensive. It's about £1,000 a day you've got to raise. And a lot of it, I mean, we put everything into the sanctuary. I mean, I take nothing out. And indeed, like my mum and dad still buy all the red diesel that we need for the machines. They pay for the muck removal. This is a lifetime, commitment. And, I've always said that you wouldn't possibly ask anybody else for help if you weren't fully invested yourself. And that's mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, the whole lot. But just go away and be happy, and try to make a difference where you can. That would be the best way you can help me. I don't ask for recognition. I don't want recognition. I just, would prefer to be anonymous, and I would prefer for that seed to grow and globally. I'm a nothing. I'm a nothing, a no one. I know that. I don't want to be anything other than just Fiona, the little 2-year-old in the pushchair that just wanted to help animals. And I'm very lucky to be able to do that. It is hard, and it is tiring, and it is worrying. But as I say, it may seem hopeless, but we are very blessed to live in a country where you're not helpless. And very many people do live. They're born in poverty, they exist in poverty, and they die in poverty without a voice. And that's the same with the animals. So make sure that you use your voice, you use your liberty, you use your freedom to make a difference for them.
That was beautiful. I could not have said that better myself. Fiona, thank you so much for your time. You've been amazing. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you.